All right, let's talk to Martin Plaut, who is a fellow at the Institute of Commonwealth Studies. He joins me live from London. Welcome to the programme, Martin. Some of these images from Mekele are absolutely horrific. As someone that follows conflicts in Africa closely, how concerning is this renewal of violence on Tigray, that is targeting civilians?
Yes, I mean, one can't be sure that the civilians were being targeted, but they certainly were hit. And the numbers we're now hearing is that 7 people have been killed, another 10 were taken to hospital, and some of the pictures which I'm pleased you didn't show were actually much more graphic than the ones you did. Like it was a child with his stomach torn open by shrapnel. It was absolutely appalling. I mean, the problem is that this is really a regional conflict. It's not just an Ethiopian conflict. The Eritreans who live north of Ethiopia have been involved right from the beginning. There were Somali troops also involved, and that makes finding some kind of solution to this conflict so terribly difficult.
And why was the truce broken in the first place after so many months?
Well, in a sense, it's really in nobody's interest for the truce to continue. The talks were being held. Actually, there were 2 rounds of talks. One I hear in Seychelles, another one in Djibouti, between the government and the Tigrayan rebels. And the problem was that they are miles apart. The Tigrayans say, well, we want to have our borders they were before the war began, and we want to have an open border situation. We want to have public negotiations. And the Ethiopian government says, well, we're not going to have any preconditions. But the whole of Tigray is surrounded and cut off by the Eritreans and by the Ethiopians. And therefore, in a sense, the government just has to sit back and do nothing. And the millions of Tigrayans are living close to starvation. And that's just not it just can't continue. So in a sense, one day this was always going to burst open. Either you have peace talks which succeeded, or you're going to have war.
And you say the 2 sides are very far apart. So what hopes are there for peace talks? We heard that UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres hoping for a resumption of peace talks.
I mean, to be honest with you, the only way you're going to get peace talks is there are two routes to this. Either the Tigrayans launch a major offensive now and manage to create a corridor through to Sudan so they can then open new ways of getting food and supplies into Tigray. But it's a very, very difficult terrain to work over. And most of the Eritrean forces are there, plus a lot of Ethiopian forces. So it'll be very, very tough. If they do that, that would then change the whole perspective on the war, and it might lead to peace talks because the balance of power would have changed. The other way would be if the international community is prepared to put sanctions, real sanctions on the Ethiopians, to say, unless you come to the negotiating table and prepared to make serious concessions to the Tigrayans, so that they can actually live as a proper part of Ethiopia. I can't see these talks succeeding. But we just don't know whether either of those are really going to happen. And if it doesn't, well, then we can predict 2 things. One is more starvation, and the other one is more fighting.
All right. And Martin, just looking at a comment there from the head of the WHO, who recently criticised the international community for giving more attention to crises elsewhere, particularly Ukraine, which he said is worse than Ethiopia. Do you think Ethiopia has been forgotten?
Well, it's partly forgotten. And don't forget, they have probably the best estimate we have is that something like 150,000 people have died in this war. That is 10 times the number that have been killed in Ukraine, and yet you hardly see anything about it. Now, that is a deliberate strategy by both the Eritreans and the Ethiopians, who do not allow reporters in the area, either government reporters or opposition reporters or independent journalists, to come in and report from the war zone. And as long as you do that, as long as there are no pictures, well, what are you going to show on television? You know as well as I do that, television lives on pictures. And if you deny the pictures, you deny the story. And as a result, it's almost impossible to get any kind of grip on what is going on there, because you're always having to rely on vague sources, it's not satisfactory. And that's why we're not hearing anything about it.
Martin Plaut, it's been fantastic to get so much context and background into what's happening in Ethiopia right now with you. Thank you so much.